Hey, it's me, your favorite political extremist, Je Regarde. I did a lot of reading over Christmas. I like the feeling of reading a book, and the whole process of reading something is kind of meditative for me. Because my job over the last 9 months or so has essentially been to talk about politics, I've been reading a lot of political literature so I can make sure that the information I portray in videos like this and my satire is accurate and informative. So recently I have read and reread a bunch of political extremist literature, and now I'm going to review it all for you guys. The Communist Manifesto by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. So if you want to really read Marx, then I suggest you read Das Kapital instead of the Communist Manifesto. But if you're just getting into economic leftism, into Marxism, and you want to kind of get a starting point, then the Communist Manifesto is probably your best bet. I own it, of course. As you can see, it's a very thin read, and actually, I think about half of this is just introduction and a preface. So the actual text is only about like this thick, which is nothing. You could probably read this in like an hour or less. Marxism is the foundation of almost every economically far left modern day ideology, be it fascist, anarchist, or communist. So if you are an economically far left-winger, then this one is an essential read. 10 out of 10. The Ego and His Own by Max Stirner. The Ego and His Own is a seminal piece of anarchist literature and is essentially the foundation of individualist anarchist and anarcho-egoist thought. Stirner's vision of an anarchist future and his expert dismantling of societal constructs he called spooks was so compelling he almost got Engels, the co-writer of the Communist Manifesto, to convert to his side and become an anarchist. If you want to know about individualist anarchism or want to know what posties mean when they talk about spooks, then this is the book for you. 10 out of 10. Down with spooks! Fuck the spooks! Don't take that out of context. The works of Julius Evola. Julius Evola is what I would call an esoteric traditionalist. I have one of his books here called Masque et Visage, which kind of tries to draw the links between esotericism and traditionalism. Of course, you can't really talk about Evola without talking about probably the piece of literature he's most well known for, called Revolt Against the Modern World. With an unflinching gaze and uncompromising intensity, Julius Evola deftly analyzes the spiritual and cultural malaise at the heart of the Western world, and all that passes for progress in the modern day. What makes reading Julius Evola really interesting is how he conceptualizes the place of a traditionalist in a modern world. Julius Evola was not a fan of modernity, but he said that a traditionalist in modernity had only one real option, and that was to revolt against the modern world. Keep in mind, Julius Evola wasn't a fan of modernity like 100 years ago, so I don't even want to think about what would happen if he saw modernity now. Is Julius Evola a right-wing accelerationist? Well, if he was alive today, he would probably be wearing a skull mask. That's all I gotta say. 10 out of 10. Siege. Siege? What siege? From Aristocracy to Monarchy to Democracy by Hans Hermann Hoppe. If you haven't heard about Hans Hermann Hoppe, now's your time to learn. Paleo-libertarians are a lot like regular libertarians, except culturally right-wing. Hans Hermann Hoppe is probably the most famous paleo-libertarian. I mean, he calls himself a paleo-libertarian. In my mind, he's much more of an anarcho-monarch. Hoppe is not a fan of what the West calls democracy. He actually prefers monarchy to democracy, and beyond that, he prefers aristocracy to monarchy. I chose this book from Hoppe's to focus on because it kind of shows how he views historical progression. A bottom-feeding centrist might think that, as human society has progressed, it's gotten better and better. We went from aristocracy, high concentration of power, to monarchy, to democracy, and now we've got a wide concentration of power, and everybody has a say. But in this book, Hoppe pretty eloquently argues that all we really did was go from privately owned government to publicly owned government, which he argues is much worse. And in this, as well as all of Hoppe's work, you can kind of see his vision of an ideal anarcho-capitalist utopia shining through, where there is no government, just pure capitalism. And forced removals. And there's no gays. Hippity-hoppity, get off my property. Hippity-hop, commies fall out the chop. 10 out of 10. On the topic of libertarianism, I would be remiss to not mention the foundational text of libertarianism. Lolita. 10 out of 10. Oh, I guess Ayn Rand wrote some stuff as well. Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand expressed her political ideology of objectivism through these pretty lengthy novels. Atlas Shrugged is probably her most well-known work. This is actually also maybe some of the most recent political literature that I'm reviewing, especially compared to how old the rest of political extremist literature tends to be. And even this is really old. I've read this one a lot, you can kind of tell because it's sort of falling apart at this point. Rand's stories often feature this great man who's held back by some kind of governmental system that wants to pull you down and make everybody equal. And Ayn Rand's vision of a good future is when great men go on their own path and forge their own destiny. And she talks a lot about the dangers of socialism and how socialism will snuff out the great men of the world. Ayn Rand is a really good writer, and you can tell this because all of the good characters agree with her philosophically, and all of the bad characters disagree with her philosophically, so that's good. If you want the perspective of someone who thinks that selfishness through capitalism is actually a virtue, then Ayn Rand is obviously a cornerstone of that belief. 10 out of 10. Mein Kampf. 10 out of 10. And now, a word from our sponsor. Hey, you there! Do you want to stop being such an idiot and be smart like me? Did you make a New Year's resolution to read more, and now you realize you're too stupid to even follow through on that? Then you gotta try this video's sponsor, Blinkist. Blinkist? More like, blink twice, help me, I'm trapped! With Blinkist, you can bring in the new year with the hope of being as well read as me without having to actually read a book. Blinkist has access to over 3,000 non-fiction books in over 27 categories. And the best part is, you don't have to read! To be clear, you won't have to read again, because it takes whole books and then summarizes the key points into like these 15-minute slides that are really easily digestible. Now you may ask, does Blinkist have any of the books that I reviewed in this video? Let me tell you more about the books they have. I intimately know the demographic of my audience, and as a result, I have some books that I enjoy that I think you guys are really going to enjoy as well. I've really been enjoying Common Sense Pregnancy by Gian Faulkner. She reveals all you need to know about the surprises that await you during the magical experience of pregnancy and childbirth. Great for pregnant women of all kinds. I'd also recommend The Body Is Not an Apology by Sonia Renee Taylor. This one's an empowering read. And finally, Girl Wash Your Face by Rachel Hollis. This one's perfect for moms and women who feel overwhelmed by life. And the author, Rachel Hollis, like me, is a devout Christian. The first 100 people who click the link in the description below are going to get 1 week free of Blinkist to try out. You'll also get 25% off the full membership. The 7-day trial is completely free, and you can cancel at any time. The influencer must encourage his followers to click the link in the description below. What are you waiting for, idiot? With my help, you'll never read a book again! J. Posadas, Selected Writings. If you spend much time consuming political memes, you've probably run across the ideology of Posadism. Posadism was founded by this guy, J. Posadas, who was an Argentinian Trotskyist. If you've heard about Posadism at all, it's probably only because of the memes. You know, this guy believed that nuclear war was the only way to achieve communism. He believed that humans could talk to dolphins. He believed that communist aliens were flying around, and they would interact with us if we weren't so caught up in our capitalism versus socialism struggle. Reading the selected writings of J. Posadas taught me that Posadists are normal political extremists like you or me, people who fought and suffered for their beliefs, and there is much more to them than just memes. The memes were pretty good though. 10 out of 10. The selected political writings of Rosa Luxemburg. Rosa Luxemburg was a libertarian Marxist, meaning she believed in stuff like direct democracy, she opposed authoritarianism and capitalism. As a left libertarian, she was really critical of the authoritarian leftist regimes of her time, but because criticism is kind of like an essential part of Marxism, the authoritarian leftist regimes actually worked with her to make a better leftist sort of society. Oh, actually, sorry, no, I'm misremembering that. She got shot in the head and her body was thrown into a canal. Whoops, we'll get that leftist unity next time though, boys, right? To be fair, she was complaining a lot and calling for deaths. I mean, anyone would have done it. Her most important piece of writing is probably Social Reform or Revolution. It was a pamphlet she wrote that basically outlines that stuff like trade unions and workers' rights and reform is great and all, but they are never going to achieve a socialist society by working within their system, and that a revolution was necessary much more than a reform was. So, yeah, that's something a lot of people who think that they can work within the system to change the system, centrists, need to hear. And any ideology that gets me closer to a revolution of any kind, sign me up. 10 out of 10. Quotations from Mao Zedong, aka The Little Red Book. If you've been gobbling up Western imperialist propaganda, you probably have some bad thoughts about Mao Zedong. If you actually want to know the thoughts and philosophy of this great man, then you should probably read the Little Red Book, also called Quotations from Mao Zedong. Maoism is actually still pretty relevant today, and there's this underground political party called the Maoist Communist Party of China. They're anti-revisionists. They want to overthrow the current CCP because the CCP had dengist reforms that restored the material conditions of capitalism. It's fun stuff. So the Little Red Book isn't really like political literature, it's just a collection of quotes. I wouldn't really recommend you read it the whole way through. You should just like keep it on your person and flip to a random page if you need inspiration. So instead of reviewing a book of quotes, I'll just share some of them with you that I liked. Communism is not love. Communism is the hammer with which we will use to crush the enemy. This quote really sums up the difference between the authoritarian left and the libertarian left, in my view. Not having a political point of view is like not having a soul. Mao was an anti-centrist. You heard it here first, folks. Here's another anti-centrist quote. It's why I like the man. I have more in common with the fascist, or the capitalist, or the anarchist than I ever will with the politically disengaged. And finally, his last and most famous quote, "The sparrow is the enemy of the people." Mao Zedong famously hated sparrows. He actually died trying to strangle one, and he fell off the tree and broke his neck. Get him, Mao! Get the sparrows! What? You killed all the sparrows and now there's a famine? Capitalists at it again. 10 out of 10. Industrial Society and Its Future by Theodore J. Kaczynski. You probably view this as anprim literature. It's not really anprim literature. Ted wasn't really an anprim. There's actually like a full chapter in here denouncing anarcho-primitivism. Not by name, but essentially denouncing anarcho-primitivism. Ted Kaczynski really made a very powerful case against technology with this book, and he was a very well-known professor, and everybody loved him, and he did no harm, and he didn't kill anybody. Again, a lot of people know politics through memes, which is good, but you kind of lose out on something because everybody thinks Ted is like an anprim. And he's similar to an anprim, but he's not really an anprim, and you kind of have to like read the actual manifesto in order to like understand the difference between him and a regular anprim. If you want more pure anarcho-primitivist literature, then I recommend John Zerzan's Against Civilization. If nothing else, Ted Kaczynski teaches us all of that. Even if no one actually wants to read our essays about society, we can just blow some people up and send it to some newspapers, and then everybody has to read it. And of course, I would be remiss to end this list without mentioning the cornerstone of transhumanist philosophy, Robots 2005. Man, being a transhumanist is sick because you get to do praxis just by reading sci-fi stories. So that's all the books that I have for you today, though really I could go on forever like this. There are so many books of political extremism just waiting to radicalize you. Now, some of you may note that it's pretty unlikely that I actually read every single book that I just recommended to you. That there's no way of me proving that I actually read these books, and that I might have just skimmed the Wikipedia article and read the back cover and then made up some opinion about it, and you are none the wiser because you have no way of proving that I actually read these books. And if you think that, you're right. I did not open a single one of these books. I have never fully read a book about politics in my life. And yet it's my job to do this. It's my job to talk about politics. I'm just pretending. I do not know if a single thing I said about any of these books are true. I read them off Wikipedia, I misremembered some information I read on a forum for most of them. Every single thing I said about Julius Evola comes from this reading guide I found on 4chan, where he like summarizes each one of the books, and I actually plagiarized word for word a couple of the sentences that he said that he used to describe revolt against the modern world. I don't even remember what it's fucking called because I've never seen that book in my life. And oh, by the way, these books that I have here, I've got my roommate to check them out of the library for me. This book, it's not beaten up because I've read it a lot. It's just beaten up because it's an old book. I have not cracked this shit open. Do you see how thick this is? Do you think I have the attention span to get through this? No thanks. Sorry, Ayn Rand. Gonna read a Wikipedia article about you in 5 minutes, and then I'm gonna pretend like I've read the book. This, it's a prop. I have not read the Communist Manifesto, and I do not intend to. This, it's a prop. It's in French because they only had a French version of Julie Civille's work. I do not intend to read that one either. This Lolita gag? This isn't even Lolita. It's a secondary source studying the text of Lolita. Couldn't find their actual text. Does it matter? Doesn't matter. The Mao Zedong quotes I got from brainyquote.com, and I think I made up like at least half of them. I simply do not care about these books. I see no need to read these books. They're long, they're dense, they're boring, and I can pretend like I read them by reading a 10-minute Wikipedia article. The truth of the matter is that these books are old and boring, and they don't appeal to the youth. You want to know how young people get their politics now? Memes. Charismatic talkers. That's it. As a Zoomer, social media has fucked up my brain. My dopamine sensors are all out of whack, and now I don't have the attention span to actually sit down and read a book. Still though, I'll pretend like I can, and I'll pretend like I'm better than you because of it. The truth of the matter is that I do not give a fuck about these old, boring, dead people. And even if I did, I wouldn't have the attention span to read them. So instead, I'll just consume memes and pretend like I know what I'm talking about. While academics waste thousands of dollars and years of their life reading books, people like me are just pretending to read books and coming across as more intelligent than them. There is no longer a delineation between education and entertainment. Now I, as an entertainer, have more power than most academics. Can you find the primary source where Jay Poseidas says that human beings can talk to dolphins? Go on, try to find it. I'll wait. It doesn't exist. It doesn't fucking exist. But Poseidism has something to do with dolphins, right? I know it because I saw a bunch of memes. The memes can't be lying, can they? Can they? Can they? I am a satirist, and you think that satire has to come from truth, don't you? But what happens when satire is dead? Underlying layer is dead. Look at me. Satire, that's all that matters now. The truth. Look at me. But what happens when that truth is gone, and there's just a chaotic undercurrent? What happens then? Well, then you don't get satire, do you? You get me. It doesn't matter which one of these books is right. It doesn't matter which one of these books is true. Pick a book. Find a group. That's it. That's all you have to do. We pretend to read a book so we seem smart, and then we sell you an app so that you can seem smart. But we're all just fucking stupid, aren't we? Looking at shadows dance on the cave wall. So just pick a worldview. You can do it randomly. It really doesn't matter. And you shouldn't worry about whether or not your worldview is true or right. What you have to do is you have to find that worldview, and you have to hold onto it, and close your eyes, and shut your ears, and grasp. Grasp onto it with everything you have. And if someone tries to pull you away from it, grasp harder and bite. Otherwise, you'll be a blind kid. Oh, I wish I had a framework to sort out the absurdity of the world, and you'll be grasping at something, anything, so that you can see again. Just grasp. Find something. Anything. Doesn't matter. And put it in. Put the contacts in. It doesn't matter how you see the world after that point. The point is you can see the world. And when the contact is in your eye, you will forget you were ever blind. You will long to put the fractured pieces of truth back together. You will long for it. You will hope that it's possible, but it's not possible anymore. And so you'll grasp like a kid. Contact just fell out of his eye, and you'll find something, anything, and that will be your framework. And you'll feel comfortable and happy. Go with it. And that's all you need to do. Pick something blindly, because otherwise there's nothing here. There's nothing here for you. There's nothing here except me. Anyway, install the app, Blinkist. Hi, I'm going to do a live stream exactly 1 week after I release this video where I read some of Jay Poseidas' work. I think that's probably a safe bet for YouTube. I don't think that'll get me taken down or anything. So yeah, join me here in a week and I will be reading out some Poseidas literature. So join that if you wanna listen.